Join me as I dive deep into the transformation and downfall of Ronnie Coleman, and see if I can uncover the real story behind the King of Bodybuilding. Ronnie Coleman is a name that's synonymous with bodybuilding. He's a legendary figure in the sport, an 8-time Mr. Olympia winner, and a behemoth of a man who dominated the competition stage for years. But despite his impressive physique and numerous accolades, Ronnie's life hasn't been without its challenges. Ronnie's intense training regimen was the stuff of legend. He would push his body to the limit, day in and day out, sacrificing his health and well-being in pursuit of physical perfection. And while it may have paid off in the short term, earning him numerous titles and a reputation as one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time, the long-term consequences were devastating. Over the years, Ronnie's body began to break down, his joints worn out from the constant pounding, his muscles screaming in agony from the relentless strain. As the years went by, Ronnie's injuries began to pile up. He suffered through multiple herniated discs, torn muscles, and broken bones, all of which took a toll on his body and his spirit. And yet, he refused to stop, driven by a fierce dedication to his craft and a desire to remain at the top of his game. But the human body can only take so much, and eventually, Ronnie's injuries caught up with him. Despite his injuries, Ronnie continued to push himself to the limit, ignoring the warning signs and the pleas of his loved ones to slow down. He became a shell of his former self, a mere shadow of the dominant force that once strode across the competition stage. And as he struggled to come to terms with his declining health, the world around him began to change. The sport of bodybuilding, which had once been his lifeblood, began to move on without him. Ronnie's rise to fame was nothing short of meteoric. He went from being a humble police officer to a global superstar, his name and face synonymous with bodybuilding. And as his fame grew, so did his dedication to the sport. He spent every waking moment in the gym, honing his craft, perfecting his physique, and pushing himself to new heights. It was a lifestyle that was both exhilarating and exhausting, one that took a heavy toll on his body and his relationships. But Ronnie's success was not without its costs. The constant pressure to perform, the endless scrutiny of his physique, and the crushing weight of expectation all took their toll on his mental and emotional well-being. He became isolated, withdrawn, and increasingly reliant on painkillers to manage the constant agony that racked his body. And as the years went by, his relationships began to suffer, his friendships dwindling, his marriage collapsing under the strain. Ronnie's lifestyle was one of extremes, a never-ending cycle of training, eating, and sleeping, with little room for anything else. It was an existence that was both all-consuming and ultimately unsustainable, one that would eventually exact a heavy price from his body and his soul. And yet, despite the warning signs, despite the pleas of his loved ones, Ronnie refused to listen, driven by a fierce determination to remain at the top of his game. The moment of reckoning came when Ronnie's health issues became public. The surgeries, the injuries, the constant pain and discomfort, it all came to a head, and suddenly, the world was forced to confront the human cost of Ronnie's dedication to bodybuilding. It was a moment of profound sadness, a moment of reckoning, and a moment of regret. For Ronnie, for his loved ones, and for the sport of bodybuilding itself, it was a wake-up call, a harsh reminder of the price that's paid when we push ourselves too far. Ronnie Coleman's journey is a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the strongest among us can fall, and that the pursuit of greatness can come at a terrible cost. It's a story of transformation and downfall, of rise and decline, and of the human spirit's capacity for both greatness and sacrifice. What do you guys think about Ronnie Coleman's journey? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to watch more videos about iconic athletes and their challenges, be sure to check out our channel, covering what really destroyed his body. Ronnie Coleman is a legend in the world of professional bodybuilding, with a career spanning over 2 decades and 8 Mr. Olympia titles to his name. But what many fans may not know is the devastating toll his sport has taken on his body over the years. Ronnie's extreme training regimen and competitive lifestyle took a massive hit on his body. He was known for lifting heavy weights and pushing himself to the limit, which led to chronic injuries and eventually, countless surgeries. His spine has been severely compressed, he's had his hips replaced, and he's undergone numerous surgeries on his shoulders, elbows, and knees. It's no wonder he's been left with a permanent limp and has to walk with the aid of a cane. As a professional bodybuilder, Ronnie had to constantly push himself to be bigger and better, which meant constantly increasing the weight and intensity of his workouts. This led to a never-ending cycle of pain and injury, with Ronnie sacrificing his health and well-being for the sake of his sport. But what's truly shocking is that even with all these warning signs, Ronnie continued to push himself, ignoring the pleas of his doctors and trainers to slow down or take a break. He was so focused on being the best that he was willing to risk everything, including his own health, to get there. Ronnie's training regimen was unlike anything you've ever seen before. He would train for hours on end, day in and day out, pushing himself to the limit and beyond. He would sacrifice his social life, his relationships, and even his own health just to get bigger and stronger. And it worked, for a while. But the toll it took on his body was immense, with injuries piling up and surgeries becoming the norm. In his prime, Ronnie was an unstoppable force, dominating the bodybuilding scene and breaking records left and right. But behind the scenes, he was struggling to keep up with the demands of his sport. He was constantly in pain, constantly injured, and constantly under the knife. And yet, he continued to push himself, driven by a desire to be the best and a fear of being left behind. One pivotal moment in Ronnie's career stands out: his decision to continue competing despite his deteriorating condition. He was in constant pain, his body was breaking down, and his doctors were telling him to stop. But he refused to give up, convincing himself that he could still win, that he could still be the best. And so he continued to push himself, ignoring the warning signs and risking everything for one last shot at glory. As we look back on Ronnie's career, it's clear that his decision to keep competing was a turning point. It marked the beginning of the end, a downward spiral of pain, injury, and surgery that would eventually leave him crippled and in constant pain. It's a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the strongest and most determined among us can fall victim to the ravages of time and our own hubris. In the end, Ronnie's body paid the ultimate price for his success. He's now left with a lifetime of chronic pain and disability, a constant reminder of the sacrifices he made for his sport. It's a sobering reminder that our bodies are not invincible, that there are limits to what we can do, and that sometimes, even the greatest among us must face the consequences of our actions. Thanks for joining me on this journey into Ronnie Coleman's incredible story. If you've got thoughts on Ronnie's journey, please leave them in the comments below. And don't forget to check out more videos related to fitness and bodybuilding. I've got some great content coming up that you won't want to miss.
Don't wanna test your luck with me. I think I've had enough disease. I'm sick of all the bad thoughts, people who are half-nots.
You are not as tough
that you never guess. I don't slack, don't lose, learn your lesson yet. When I get to choose what I do, I'm like a weapon. I'm not sharp as many, but got heart, I'm ready to change scars to envy, to win large and plenty. I like to